One thing that all three faiths that we've talked about this evening share is the occasional dichotomy between the orthodoxy, what is putatively believed, and the level of orthopraxy. How often do we put into practice that which we profess to believe? Do you believe that there's a similar amount of friction among the faiths between what we should be and what we are, or do you think that some do a better job of dealing with that occasional disconnect, if that makes any sense?
What was that point? Is that for all of us?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if it's fair for me to compare. I do believe that conflict exists in my community. It exists within myself. I have to struggle to practice what I've come to believe, and it's a daily struggle. So I don't make myself an exception to it, so I don't in good conscience think that our community at large is an exception to it. There is a problem of, at least in my observation, in faith communities across the world, there is an increasing problem of lesser and lesser adherence, practically speaking, and religion is sort of increasingly being reduced to a spiritual entity that I'm consciously Christian or consciously Muslim or spiritually Jewish or something, or Hindu even for that matter, but practically my lifestyle is no different than yours in pretty much all the things I do. And I personally think for Muslims that's a real problem because it doesn't represent, you don't have Islam in your heart, at least from the text's point of view. You can't have something like this in your heart and it not manifest in your character, in your behavior, in the way you carry yourself, in every matter really, from the way you speak to the way you eat to the way you're going to do business to the kind of life you're going to lead, the kind of family you're going to raise. It really does texture everything. Yeah.
And I would almost go with the maturation image again, that the New Testament scriptures again and again talk about growing up in every way into Christ. It's a relationship that we grow into, and so the stages of spiritual childhood and spiritual adolescence and spiritual maturity, it seems to me that that's an ongoing pathway, an ongoing process, and we always come short. Erskine of Linlathen, a rather obscure spiritual author in Christianity, said, theology in Christianity, theology is all grace and ethics is all gratitude. And it seems to me that that's probably how I work this process. It's all gratitude for the gift that's given, and so to live in that grace gratefully is how you reconcile orthodoxy with orthopraxy. You live gratefully for grace.
I had seen a third question at the very back. Yes, please. Here's the microphone. Thank you.
Each of you seem to have a fairly generous concept of personal conscience under the assumption that we are working to please God in some form or the other. How do you deal with leaders in your own faith that you see as teaching something so heretical in your point of view? How do you deal with internally leaders in your own faith that seem to be striving in a way that you think is contrary to where divine authority and personal conscience should be going?
Can I take that first?
Thank you very much.
I love that one. Thank you for your question, sir.
We'll go, I'm going to suggest we go Rabbi first, and then we'll just go 1, 2, 3.
I'm still thinking.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I actually feel that, and I've grappled with this question in my own community, and I've come to some conclusions. I don't know if they represent all Muslim community leaders or people that are taking the pulpit in any capacity. And I'm actually technically not a religious authority. But I've come to the conclusion that strange interpretations and extremes when it comes to religion are a product of how strange people can be themselves. And there's really not going to be an end to that. What you can do is you can drown out the craziness by making the normal really, really loud and well known. And really that's the only sane way to deal with extremism in any form. The more you try to address it the more you're giving it momentum and you're acknowledging its presence. And the more you ignore it and continue to actually spread what is supposed to be spread, and be confident that its own intellectual merits and its own moral and spiritual strength and basis strong enough to actually drown out anything that doesn't have that kind of a basis. Because if you and I believe that something is an extreme interpretation, then obviously it doesn't have deep roots. It can't, right? So my philosophy has been that to be an activist in preaching and in communicating what is supposed to be what I believe to be the normal and the sound, the deep interpretation, which if it does hold true, my faith tells me God will help make that sustain and make what is froth and extreme and no good and poisonous for people, wash away like rain washes away twigs and dirt from the earth, and the street becomes clean. So that's my take on that.
I begin with a good faith assumption. I assume that the person whose interpretation is at great variance with me cares as much about being in right relationship with God as I am. And so I will accord a good faith assumption. That's the first step. The second step is that I will say, come, let us reason together. Let's gather about the established text and show me why you think what you think. Show me from the text how you have gotten to that conclusion. And then in the community of interpretation, I think there is self-correction and community correction that takes place. It may very well be that person whose interpretation seems extreme to me has got a piece of the truth that my own biases are hiding from me. And so to be able to see it from their eyes through their grid might very well help me to see the truth that I need to see.
In Judaism, we have a concept that in Hebrew is expressed as Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chayim, which means these and those are the words of the living God. There can be multiple interpretations that are all true at the same time. And we tend to talk about Shivim, 70 different facets of Torah, 70 different possibilities. Of course, once we say that there are 70, the question is, well, that means there's a 71st that's outside of the framework. And of course, how do you decide which are the 70 interpretations that are true and which is the 71st or the 75th or the 80th that's not within the purview of the faith? I am an Orthodox rabbi, which means I'm on the more conservative side, the more traditional side of the Jewish spectrum. There are Jewish movements, Jewish denominations that are more liberal to greater or lesser degrees, the Reform movement and the conservative movement. The general interpretation, the general direction within Orthodox Judaism, the Judaism that I am associated with, is that the 70 legitimate interpretations are found within Orthodoxy, and in the conservative and Reform denominations, their interpretations are outside of the pale. I don't subscribe to that. With great difficulty, I struggle to find, and do find that there may be and there is truth in many different interpretations of Torah, even outside of my denomination, outside of Orthodoxy, in the Reform and conservative movements. Their interpretations that are in those movements are sometimes very, very, very different than the way I live my life. But I do believe there can be, and there often is, a fragment of truth just about everywhere, and the struggle and perhaps even the mission is to find and acknowledge truth in every corner.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to be anxious to be true to our time, and so I will say one or two things. I'm going to invite Dr. Todd Collier to come say a word, and then we will dismiss. Yes.
I'm at the end.
You're at the end, yes. The first thing I'm going to say is I have a feeling that third question had to do with more difficult problems in leadership than merely have to do with wrong interpretation, and that fall over into the place in which human beings, sometimes in small and sometimes in large numbers, are being harmed seriously, and how our traditions deal with that may be a very good dialogue for a future session, to be true to that. I'm going to now invite Dr. Todd Collier to come up and say a word. He has been one of the instigators and motivators of these trilogue sessions. And then I'll say a word, and then Rabbi Schlesinger will say a word about the next program. Todd, you want to use that one?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Instigator is probably a good word. More of a Presbyterian enigma. If any of you are familiar with Presbyterians, we usually do everything decently and in order, and as you can see, my position here is a little out of order, and I apologize. I was having dinner with the rabbi. So, real quickly, thank you for being here. I want to say just a real quick, brief word about the Center for Interfaith Inquiry. We exist, we are committed to life-preserving and life-enhancing values. We are thankful that you are here, you're gathered here with us this evening, and share in those values. We exist to welcome all spiritual paths that accept these generally accepted values that foster mutual trust, understanding, and cooperation in order to work together for the common good. We seek to live out these life-giving values through service, dialogue, and by the way, Ken Campbell is here, our volunteer coordinator. I think you got a table out there somewhere maybe, and we're developing an email list so we can keep in touch with you all, and you can hear about our future dialogue events as well. Education and celebration are the values that we seek to live out and inspire, both through youth and adults of various faiths to go create communities that go beyond indifference, fear, skepticism, to the valuing and engagement of differences. To engage diverse faith communities in understanding their respective stories, understanding their own respective stories, celebrating both the commonalities and differences and distinctiveness of their various traditions and cultures. The center exists not to create some kind of syncretistic, religious, kumbaya movement. A naive attempt, I believe, of human design to roll all religions into one faith for all. It's a seductive thought, but no amount of religious enterprising could ever hope to accomplish such a vision for humankind. We believe what we believe. The problem is that we want unity on our own terms. And it is our rival programs for unity that so often tear us apart. Finally, what the center seeks to do, and we welcome all of you to be a part of this, focus on three aspects: collaborative service, normalizing, to use our Islamic friends' words, normalizing these relationships, and interfaith dialogue. There's no room for rival programs and controlling egos, looking for credit and recognition. Leaders build consensus, volunteers come to serve, work gets done, relationships are formed, and bridges are built. That is why we exist, and we welcome all of you to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
So I will just say a quick word about putting things into practice. This is one of many, many kinds of trilogue sessions that have happened in the past in Dallas and will happen in the future, organized by the center and organized by others. It is my personal hope and my dream that this will result in conversations not merely among religious scholars, who we're very fortunate to have, but among lay people and others who are interested in getting to know their neighbor better and understanding their neighbor better. And in a sense, the little reception after this is beginning point one to that. So I'm going to urge you as a practical matter, session by session as we move along, I'll get more serious about the practical matter, but practical matter number one is talk to someone this evening over coffee, tea, and kosher whatever. Talk to someone who you suspect from the style of their clothing or just the look in their eye might be from a different religious tradition than yours, and just visit with them a little bit. Get to know them a little, maybe ask them a question, and I think that will be a good start to carrying on this in-depth scholarly dialogue into our daily lives. So, Rabbi Schlesinger, would you come up and talk to us about the next program?
To sum up with some thanks and with some technical details. I notice here Tricia Harris in the audience. I just want to acknowledge that this new interfaith dialogue series, Faiths in Conversation, grew out of the Connecting Our Faith series, which was my really introduction and inspiration as far as interfaith dialogue goes. Tricia Harris and Marzouk, I don't think Marzouk is here, really were and are my inspirations in this whole endeavor. That's point number one. Point number two, I do want to thank Todd and the Memnosian Foundation, who are our overall sponsors for this program, as well as SMU, represented by Dr. Robert Hunt, another of our sponsors. And of course, the other sponsors are the institutions connected to the speakers tonight. My organization, Jewish Studies Initiative, and the Bayina Institute of Ustad Neumann Ali Kahan, and of course, the Northway Christian Church. Our next program, the second in the series, is April 10th, and the subject is prayer. How do we pray as a Jew, Christian, and Muslim? In that framework, we're going also to deal with the very, in my mind, difficult but important question: is there any place at all, at some points, for Jews, Christians, and Muslims to pray together? I'm looking forward to that dialogue, April 10th, at the Islamic Center of Irving, and I think there are flyers available here. There are flyers available as we walk out. At the very, very end, as we move towards refreshments and getting to know each other, I just want to take half a minute to mention my own programs here in Dallas, opportunities to learn about Judaism for those who are interested. There's a flyer at the back table there. I see the back table is gone, but there must be someplace the flyers about the Dallas Jewish Learning Fest, which is a series of 100 different classes on Judaism beginning this Sunday, going on for 8 days. So anyone who's interested, people of all faiths are welcome. Again, the flyers are in the back there. And lastly, my mission in life is to spread knowledge of Judaism among Jews and among others who might be interested. There might be flyers there in the back, I'm sure there are, about my own personal programs of the Jewish Studies Initiative of North Texas. So thank you very much for coming, and join us for the refreshments.